Hey, Robertson Chapel, welcome to day 27 of the Bible reading plan. Today is a hard one for me to do, and I'm faced with the pressure of trying to do this chapter justice, and it's just not going to be done. I just can't. I'm gonna try to do the best I can, but I don't know. We can't approach this chapter with anything but just a somber heart and. I'll just go through it here today. I want to look at a few things, but what I see in this chapter, the crucifixion of Jesus, I see the theme of innocence. And we see that from the very beginning. We see Judas, we know the decision Judas made to, betray Jesus. And it says in verse 4, I'll start in verse 3. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that Jesus was condemned, he changed his mind and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. See, he realizes Jesus is innocent right there, and he knew he was. And then, see, Jesus is brought before Pilate, and Pilate, it says, he stood before the governor. The governor asked him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus says, You have said so. But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. And then Pilate asks, Do you hear the things they testified against you? And Jesus still gave no answer to them, not even to a single charge. And then this is where I want to kind of focus on today. It says, Pilate is looking at Jesus, he's questioning him, and he's realizing this man is innocent. He has done no wrong. There is nothing that they can put against him that is worth, anything, or is something that he has done. He's innocent. And so Pilate goes before the crowd and he asks them, he's like, he says, like, are you sure you want to crucify him? Like, or are you sure you want to condemn him? They say, crucify him, crucify him. So then Pilate says, okay, you can have either let free Barabbas, which is a notorious criminal, or you can release Jesus, who is innocent. And the crowd says, release Barabbas. They say, Barabbas, Barabbas. And, there's not much Pilate can do. It says in verse 21, the governor said to them, Which of the two do you want me to release? And they said, Barabbas. And Barabbas, it's really interesting, this story, because if we look at the word Barabbas, if you know your Greek, bar, anytime you say bar, B-A-R, it means son. And anytime you see Abba, Abba Father, it is Father. So Barabbas would be son of the Father. So son of the Father. You see? And it's kind of cool, the parallel of Jesus and Barabbas, which means son of the Father. And some translations, I have a translation up here, I believe, that says Jesus Barabbas. They say his first, part of his name was Jesus Barabbas. But, there's debate on whether that's an accurate translation or not. But if his name is truly Jesus, then we're kind of dealing with these two people with the same name, and it's these two sons of God. We see son of the Father either way. We're dealing with these two sons. One will be set free, and one will be sacrificed for the sins of the world. And they say release Barabbas, and Pilate says, what evil has Jesus done? And they just say all the more, crucify him, crucify him. Now, if you're Barabbas in this, I can imagine, just me imagining in my head, this guy's in a cell in the back somewhere. He can't hear anything but the crowd's cries. He can't hear Pilate's voice as one man, but he can hear the big crowd all together when they roar. And we look at the lines. Pilate brings, he asks, I could sacrifice, or I could, crucify Jesus, or he says we could let Jesus free, or we could let Barabbas free. And the crowd says, Barabbas. So you can imagine Barabbas like perking up, saying, like, they're saying my name. And then he says, okay, are you sure what has Jesus done? And they say, crucify him, crucify him. So now Barabbas has only heard, Barabbas, crucify him. So now he's sitting there, just like in my scenario I'm thinking about, and he's going, oh no, my sins have caught up to me. I'm guilty, my sins have caught up to me. It's time for me to pay for them, to be crucified for my sins. And then I imagine when they bring him out and they set him free, he's like, who is this man who is taking on my place, who is taking my place? This innocent man who is, being the scapegoat, if you will, for me. And it's interesting, that term scapegoat that we've always said, a lot of us don't really know it comes from the Bible. And I'll just flip back into Leviticus here. This scapegoat, I want to read a little bit about it. In Leviticus 16, it's really interesting. It says the people of Israel chose 2 male goats for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And we see this ritual of the scapegoat go on. And anyways, in chapter 16, the law is creating this, ordering this ritual to be done, where you basically cast lots on 2 goats. And whichever goat the lot falls on, that goat is set free, and the other goat is a sacrifice for a sin offering. So that parallels this story exactly. Pilate is saying, I'm casting lots for which one of these will be set free. And Barabbas gets set free into the wilderness, and Jesus is the, scapegoat. He's the one who has to die and dies for the sins of the world. It's the exact parallel of this ritual from the Old Testament. It's awesome. And I could write a sermon on this. There's so much depth to this story. But Barabbas was set free while the innocent was condemned. And that's like us. We can be sons and daughters of the Father because Jesus paid for our sins on our behalf. Just like Jesus was the reason that Barabbas could be set free, Jesus is the reason we can be set free from our sins. And I just want to read through this today, verse 27. I want you to dwell on this, what Jesus went through for us. It says, they gathered the whole battalion before him. They stripped him, put a scarlet robe on him, making fun of him. They twisted together a crown of thorns. They put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand like a scepter to just make fun of him. Then kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews." And they spit on him. They took the reed and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. To Golgotha, the place of the skulls, where they took him. And I don't know, I know you probably are driving or doing something usually when you listen to this, but I'd just like you to stop right now just for a second and just think about what Christ did for you. He endured the cross. He wasn't just forced to go on the cross. He didn't give up. He endured the cross. So we see that in verse 34. It says, they offered him wine to drink mixed with gall, but when he tasted it, he would not drink. And he knew what this wine mixed with gall, it was a pain, it was a sedative. It was something to ease the pain that they gave to him. But he tasted it, he saw that it was the sedative, and he refused it. Jesus, when he got on the cross for us and for our sins, he kept himself on the cross. The whole time he had the power to take himself off, but he held on. And I often say this, it's like when you touch a stove eye, when you instantly take your hand off of it because it's hot, it hurts. But Jesus was pressing in for us. He was pressing into the pain, pressing into death, pressing into the suffering for our sins. He wasn't a victim. He was the one who gave his life for us. And we see this in verse 49. It says he yielded up his spirit. His spirit wasn't taken from him. He yielded it up. He gave it up for us, for our sins, for us to be saved. He gave it up. And it says, behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And what that symbolizes is that we now have a pathway to God. We know the Holy of Holies was a place only the high priest could go once a year to atone for the sins of the people. But he says, now you have an atonement for the sins, and you can be connected with the Father. You can access the Father directly in spirit and in truth, not just the high priest through the temple on the behalf of Israel. You're free to do that because he gave it all. Jesus gave it all to him I owe. And so he's buried, and then they guard the temple, they guard the tomb. And tombs don't need guards. Tombs don't need guards. Jesus was different. They knew he was the Messiah, yet they still killed him. So sit in that today. Sit in the thing, knowing what Jesus did for you, knowing the suffering he endured, how he held himself on that cross. It's not an act of weakness. It was an act of the uttermost strength, the most manly deed for you men watching that's ever been done. Is Jesus holding himself on that cross and sacrificing himself for the sins of the world. So sit in this kind of somber tone today. Remember what Christ did for you. We're going to have some hope coming for you tomorrow, and I'll see you then.